Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. We're back with another In Context. Today is May 18th. The topic of discussion today is very simple. Americans' foreign policy. Trump just wrapped up his Gulf tour. A lot of the things to unpack regarding that tour. Let's start with Ihab, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair. Okay, so Trump's tour had, what looked like a love fest between him and the Gulf potentates. There has been a lot of talk about, well, this is a major change in world politics, and a new Sunni alliance is emerging to control the whatever. This is complete rubbish, to be clear. Calling the Gulf states Sunni is not just sectarian nonsense. These guys have nothing to do with Islam, so let's stop making this nonsense. B, these governments do not agree. So Qatar and the UAE and Saudi Arabia were at war in 2017. That wasn't very long ago. 3, these governments have very different agendas. 4, all what we saw was they are saying good things about Trump and Trump saying good things about them. That's a love fest. The statements Trump made about his support for them and that we're going to, you guys know how to run your life. The US is a colonial power, and this is not going to happen anytime soon. And actually what I was saying is our colonial rulers, our governors of these provinces of the empire are doing well, and we don't need to second guess them. So what he was not saying is we're going to withdraw and let you be free. He was saying that the colonies are running well with these colonial governors. I like it this way. I'm not about to come and start lecturing them about the nonsense that the Democrats talk about human rights and nonsense like that. So you guys can go and do whatever you want to do in your jails. I don't have a problem. Beside that, they said that they are going to give Trump trillions and trillions of dollars that they don't have. There is a very basic problem in Western media in perceiving the Gulf. Western media keep talking about the Gulf being fabulously rich. This is completely untrue. Nowhere in the Gulf is as rich as California or Florida. The whole problem is you have greedy capitalist Westerners looking at what they look like, they consider to be uneducated, foolish natives who have too much money in their hands, and we need to figure a way to take it from them. They don't know how to use it, so let's go take it away from them. Truth is, the net worth of the average human being in any of these countries is not much higher than the net worth of the more well-off. I'm not talking about the obscenely well-off, the more well-off suburbs of Los Angeles or Washington, D.C. So the trillions they are talking about, when you go and look at it, they are, first, the White House is inflating them. The White House is talking about 2 trillion in commitments to invest and buy from the US. The actual count by Reuters is 730 billion. And even then, these are mostly memoranda of understanding about buying civilian and military equipment. And memoranda of understanding do not necessarily mean anything. Some of these are actual contracts that are going to happen anyway. Finally, the potentates of the Gulf have learned the hard way that if they really went and tried to buy anything in the US, then all of those racist European racists are going to say these unwashed Arabs are coming and buying our industries. Doom and gloom, just like when Japan tried to buy companies in the US in the 80s. So they know better than this. So this is a show. It's useful for Trump because he is telling his voters that I'm getting the bacon home. This is a show. It's useful for the Gulf governors in the imperial order because it shows that they are well respected and their chief is heaping praise on them, so it helps stabilize them. But beside this, there is nothing much.
Yeah, I largely agree with pretty much everything you said there, to be perfectly honest. I think this was largely a show for domestic consumption for both Arab and for Trump audiences. Trump got to look like the big man on campus, as we'd say, like walking around, getting the royal treatment everywhere he went, which is something that him and his supporters like to pump out on social media to show how strong and powerful he is and how respected America is again. The Arab leaders got to hear things that, flattery about their own regimes. I totally agree with what you're saying about like this isn't a matter of like Trump saying like you're free to do what you want and God bless. Rather, it was sort of him basically saying like we approve of the way you're operating because it's in our interest. You know what you're doing, therefore do it, and we'll tell you otherwise if we don't think you're doing what should be done. And yeah, again, that's that. At some level, that's still better than the democratic, efforts and the neocon efforts of spreading democracy and liberalization. Because I think that perhaps is even more toxic, right? But that's a debate we
They
could
lay
have some
too
other
thick.
time, perhaps. I mean, I don't know. Is it worse or better? I don't know. Like,
It's
it's at one level, Trump saying,
it's
"You
less
guys do your
hypocritical.
own thing."
It's less hypocritical. So from a native of these countries, I'd say it's less toxic. It's less hypocritical.
Yeah, I just think that the
And
whole rhetoric of liberalism is failing even in the West. Like you can't talk about liberal freedoms as you see that all collapsing everywhere around you, right? So I think the whole discourse of EU style liberalism is really falling apart. And it's sign of the times, right? What is for long enough known that American regime, even Obama made this statement clear during the Arab Spring when he said, like, what did he say? If some of these Arab dictators are a little bit smarter, we could work with them, right? He made some comment to that extent. I think Shadi Hamid's book mentioned this. And like, so we've all known for quite a long time that Americans are comfortable doing business with Arab dictators so long as they play by the American rules. I mean, it goes all the way back to Reagan when he said, like, we're willing to do business with right-wing authoritarian regimes, but not left-wing authoritarian regimes. That's a direct quote you can find in history if you look it up. So, like, with that being said, this idea of some Sunni hegemon rising, that's all nonsense. I agree that these regimes are nominally Sunni, but that's really about it. I don't see them really ruling or representing Sunni interests in any serious manner beyond typical nation state considerations. The memorandums of understanding, as you noted, are not necessarily binding, and these regimes' overall GDPs are not even high enough to, invest $1 trillion. Personally, I think the number of trillion just sounds big, and Trump's dumb audience will hear that and think, "Ooh, big trillion, bigger than billion." So, like, I wouldn't be surprised if Trump literally told these guys, like, throw out $1 trillion. It sounds more dramatic. I mean, 20 years from now, it'll be a quadrillion. You know what I mean? Like, these are just random big sounding numbers that are meant to fool people that are foolish in the first place. And again, the one, regarding, we didn't really talk about Syria yet. I've been getting a lot of slack on social media because I personally think it's better for Syria to be able to start to slowly integrate back into the international system. I don't buy into this crazy conspiracy theory stuff that Syria should continue to, replicate the failed axis of resistance strategy. That those days are done. I think that Syria to succeed does need to find a way to get these sanctions removed. It needs to find a way, and the Arab states paid off their debts. I just read this. The Qatar and Saudi paid off Syria's debt. It's a big deal. That is a big deal. That will stabilize the currency.
All 15 million of them.
But that stabilizes the currency, and that gives investors more willingness to go there. Now, the next thing that's happening is these Syrian banks are getting SWIFT codes, and SWIFT codes are the bank codes are used to make international monetary transfers. So Syria is being slowly reintegrated, well, actually rapidly reintegrated back into the international banking system. And in my opinion, this all bodes well to help stabilize Syria. So there are some positives to be taken from some of the actions that have happened. But regarding Gaza specifically, it's just getting worse by the day. Israel's latest operation, I think it was literally announced today or this morning, has already killed over 150 people. It's a real, sort of a real slap in the face, Israel's way of lashing out against Trump and these Arab regimes, and it's basically asserting that we're going to continue to do whatever we want, and you try to stop us. And I think it's pretty clear that Trump isn't going to really stop them. So who's going to stop them then? And this question remains open-ended, and I don't know who has the answer to that. And that's really problematic. We heard today that this nonsense about sending people to Libya was just like a made-up story, which I think we all probably knew in the first place. Like, we've heard, Libya is always tossed around in conspiracy theories. I mean, nobody in their right mind really believed that 1 million Gazans were going to be sent to Libya. Like, come on, like this craziness. But again, this is all part of the larger disinformation campaign that probably Israel was sort of behind. And I really don't. In the end, Trump had to come home from his being treated like semi-god in his mind, being treated like some semi-divine sovereign who came home to bad economic news. They just lowered the United States credit rating, which is going to be really bad. That's going to raise interest rates. People are still very unhappy about the economy, and there was just a horrific bombing that happened at a fertility clinic that Trump's going to have to deal with, probably by one of his own people, right? Because usually fertility clinics aren't bombed by left-wing activists, right? So, Trump has to come home to domestic headaches. This little vacation of his is over, and to be perfectly honest, I don't think all that much is going to come of it in the end. I think it was mostly rhetorical, and it was mostly for optics.
I don't think Trump's voters are ignorant. I only think that greed makes people foolish. Greed and racism make people foolish. That's about it. But there are smart people who do very smart and rational decisions in their everyday lives. They just look down at the ignorant Arabs and say, "Yeah, let's go suck them dry," and that makes them foolish. About Syria and Palestine. Trump actually made a cheap act when he declared that he is going to ease off on Syria in Riyadh. This was a result of strong Turkish pushing, both of the US and the EU. Both the US and the EU right now need Turkey to balance Russia and get a deal on Ukraine going. And Turkey has been for the last 3 months making very explicit and sharp demands in any meeting with these guys that you need to let go in Syria. So Trump had to do something about it, and he went and did it and gave it as a gift to Mohammed Salman. That was Trump being cheap. Now, I think the Syrian government is acting rationally. This is a country that is completely burned out, and it is under occupation. It is under Russian occupation, it is under American occupation, and parts of it are under Israeli occupation. Expecting such a domain to get anywhere overnight is complete nonsense. People shouldn't talk out of both sides of their mouth nonsense. Should sit up and think seriously. You're talking about a large population that can't feed itself. It can't feed itself because their homes have been burned. The Assad regime thieves have not just knocked down their homes, they took the steel and masonry of the homes. They stole it. It's this bad. So people should sit up and think about what they're saying before they start saying nonsense. The US is not leaving Syria out of charity. The US is trying to reduce its involvement in the Middle East because it has long realized that it cannot handle 2 crises at once. It thinks that the strategic crisis it needs to handle right now is containment of China in East Asia. It cannot do this because it has an open crisis in Ukraine and it's trying to close it. It cannot do this because while Biden was trying to close the Ukraine crisis on slow motion, another one popped up in the Middle East. So they have to close this one, they have to close that one to be able to start doing something about China. That brings me to Gaza and Trump promises. Trump made noises about him being in disagreement with Israel, and Netanyahu was obliging and got the media, his Israeli media, to leak similar news about dramatic clashes. I think a lot of that is not true. It was just optics to complete the optics of the emperor visiting his subjects while they have nothing on their mind but adoration to him because he's on their side. There is, however, tactical disagreement between Israel and the US. The US wants the slaughter in Gaza to end. It doesn't object to the slaughter, and that's why they are releasing more weapons than before. It doesn't object to Netanyahu doing whatever he needs to do, quote unquote, needs to do in Gaza. It just needs him to get the thing done. So the problem with his talk about killing all people in Gaza is it's not doable. The problem about ejecting them from their homelands is it's not doable. So when he says I'm going to take them and eject them out of Gaza, Trump says, well, yes, actually I'm going to do it. I'm going to take Gaza myself. But then it's not doable. His point is he is grandstanding Netanyahu. You want to kill them? Go ahead, kill them. Just get it done. And his administration's calculation is this is not doable. This guy needs to end. So you want to go full scale? Go full scale. Just end it. So eventually they will stop him, but they won't stop him because they don't approve. They will stop him because this needs to come to an end. So they can't leave him in a state of war because tomorrow he starts war in Syria or he goes back to war in Lebanon. So this needs to close. That's the whole point. So those who are expecting that the American government is going to stick to its agreement with Hamas about calling on Netanyahu to cease and desist right away, no, it's not going to happen. Those who are expecting it to happen in the next few days, no, it's not going to happen. But in the next few weeks, maybe month, this will come to an end, not because the American government has any pity on people or disapproval of mass slaughter or genocide, just because they have other business to do.
Yeah, you know what? As awful as it sounds, I actually agree with that. I really think that the problem for Trump is it's not the slaughter itself, it's the slowness of its transpiring. I think Trump would be, if he could have his way, he would tell Netanyahu, look, if you want to finish these people all off right now, do it. Otherwise, it's got to stop because it looks bad. I really think the problem Trump has is not the genocide itself. It's the fact that genocide isn't quicker. Because the longer it drags on, the more it starts to rub off on him and makes him look like he can't control the situation. So that's what I see going on there. I do not believe the United States or any of these leaders affiliated with Trump have any real interest in actually doing something to end that conflict, to bring an enduring ceasefire. I don't think they care. I just think they're concerned about the optics looking worse and worse. As instead, they would prefer, let's put it this way, they prefer 100,000 people killed in one day and it all ending than 1,000 people killed for the next 100 days. That's what they would strongly prefer. One big nuke being dropped in the middle of Gaza, everyone's dead, we can move on. And I wouldn't be surprised if Trump even floated that idea. Like you'll be hated for 5 years, and then everyone will forget.
Look, there are limits to what is acceptable. So I to my mind, Europe is quite unhappy at what's happening because it's quite dangerous to them. Not because they like the humanity, because it's quite dangerous to them. The American government under Biden and then Trump has completely erased the international conventions of what's acceptable and allowed in war. This is all down the drain. Now, it is true that there is continuing to be a racist standard that applies in Ukraine. So bombing a bus in Ukraine is a big no that they are objecting about today. But bombing hospitals and streets and markets and schools and safe zones is quite fine in Gaza. But eventually, humans are humans and the convention will change, and this is dangerous to Europe because war is something that can happen in Europe. War to the American mind is something that will never happen in the US, so they don't mind. So Europe is quite scared, and that's why you hear them objecting. They are not acting because I think they calculate that the continued existence and integrity of the Western colonial alliance is more important to them than this breach of international conventions. but it's not that they are happy about it. So breaching the convention in more egregious ways, like using mass murder weapons, that I think would be a line too far for Europe.
I don't think so. I don't think they would do anything about it. I genuinely think at this point Israel can get away with doing just about anything. And other than people whining and complaining in European Parliament, Trump, along with Israeli intelligence, will find a way to whitewash it, to hold over the anger until it finally dissipates. I really do believe they can get away with just about anything at this point. If what has happened already hasn't sparked some kind of international response, serious international response, then I don't think anything will. I genuinely don't think anything will. That's why I'm not joking when I say I think Israel could probably get away with using a small tactical nuclear weapon and say they had to do it because they felt threatened, and there would be enough people to clean that up, to spin it, that it would eventually just blow over. It's sick, and I hate to say that, but that's sort of how I see it. I don't see the EU. What are they going to do? They're going to sanction the United States? They're going to sanction Israel? Are they going to march an army in? They're going to do nothing.
Israel is much more dependent on Europe than the US. Economically, Israel is much more dependent on Europe than the US.
I don't know if that would. Does that mean Europe's going to change its policies towards Israel in any meaningful way?
Any drop in the European economic support to Israel will damage Israel seriously. Israel is a colony. People live there and commit murder because they are getting paid. You have a mafia that is getting paid to kill people. And if the money supply dries up, the contract collapses. So
that might be true, but I'm just questioning, will the money side, what would it take for the money supply to finally dry up? And I don't know what the limit to that is, but I think
I don't know, but I also don't know, and I'm not claiming that I know. I'm just saying that I suspect that there are still red lines for Europe, not the US.
Yeah, I mean, okay, perhaps for Europe there are red lines, but I think we can both agree that for the United States there are no red lines.
Yeah,
I really think that if they wiped everybody out and built towers, well, Trump's mega city or whatever the hell it is,
particularly under Trump, I agree.
Yeah, under Trump, I think there's absolutely no limits. That's yeah.
Just to add to your previous thoughts, last time Trump was there as first presidency, they pledged, I believe the number was 450, $500 billion. That's the number they kept throwing around, and they only materialized 100 million in actual contracts. So I would assume that's going to happen the same now. So you're correct. I do have a question regarding the Arab rulers. If Europe is reading the tea leaves and they see what you're saying, that they're going to allow this mass, I mean, the killing numbers are like 200 or 300 a day. If those numbers quadruple, or let's say they somehow figure out a way to kill 10,000 a day, that's a lot of people, or 50,000 a day. I guess my question is, the Arab rulers, when Trump left, wrapped up his trip, the people, I'm talking the people, not the rulers, the people on the ground, everyone was kind of waiting. I remember reading a couple drop site news reports saying people were actually checking their phones to see what came out of this trip. People in Saudi Arabia, people in Dubai, people in Gaza, they're reading to see if anything came out of this. And by the end of the trip, nothing came out of it. Zero for the people of Gaza. My point is the people themselves. That's how much. Like, I know we're all angry here, maybe because we can be angry here in the United States, but do you feel anything on the ground there? I mean, that almost that dead. They're gonna allow the rulers just to do all this and nothing, no blowback, zero.
Look, the Saudi government went and stole people's land and homes, and people couldn't defend themselves in Saudi Arabia. The people in Saudi Arabia cannot defend themselves. The people in UAE cannot even pray freely. So saying, well, how are they waiting and doing nothing? Well, they can't do anything to themselves. The Arab Zionist regimes are as bad as the Israelis. And the only reason they are not committing the same massacres the Israelis are committing in Gaza is they didn't have an occasion to do it yet. Also, the fact that in the Gulf, they don't have the ability to do it. In Egypt, they are quite willing, and they have done some of that. Okay. In Syria, they have done even worse than Israel. In Iraq, they have done even worse than Israel. So when people keep talking about, well, how are Arabs not doing anything? Well, people are quite angry. People are quite dismayed at themselves. people feel humiliated because they can't do anything, but they can't do anything. So don't insult people because they can't do anything. It's not manly or proper to insult people who are held against their will. That's not right.
I agree. I will also agree. In Europe, I quite often listen to reporters there. I like the way they report the news when they report it. There has been a huge template shift in the last 2 weeks. They really don't want to see what Israel's planning. So I do agree with that. And versus the United States, it's been zero template shift.
In Europe, the calculation is this will come back to pass on us. So that's scary. I'm talking about the capitalists who don't care a bit about other non-whites. One last point. The reason Israel isn't killing 10,000, 50,000 is because it can't. This is a small country with a small army and a population of thieves. It's not the US. And people should remember that. So Israel keeps making a lot of psychological warfare. Like they spread the news about we're going to eject them to Indonesia, we're going to eject them to Maumaustan. Well, it's not doable. The only problem is not doable. But this is psychological warfare. We should stop spreading Israeli psychological warfare. We don't work for the Israeli army. Why are we spreading this nonsense?
No, I agree with that totally. To that point, I think that people have to be more critical and careful of spreading things that seem just totally fantastical and ridiculous, such as sending everybody to Libya or Indonesia. Like, people really should, at this point, have already figured out, this is part of the psychological warfare, as you said. And it just, we're just driving ourselves crazy as people who care about Gaza and who are feeling horrible that this is happening by, inadvertently spreading the flames of this propaganda and lie campaign. And, I think that, in the end, I think we have to remember, like, just too many people talk about all this stuff as geopolitical chess pieces, but these are real people. Like specifically with Syria, like, and I think you made this point earlier. People in Syria are tired. They have been under horrific conditions for over a decade, and for people to still continue to treat Syria as some chess piece that should be continuing waging jihad against the Zionists, like, who's going to do it? Who are the people that you expect to do this as you tell people that they should be doing this from the safety of your own bedroom in the United States? Like, I just can't get over this. Once again, I'm not saying I agree with everything that's going on right now that the new Syrian regime, the new Syrian government is doing, because I don't. There's certain things I'm critical of. But at the same time, the suicide option, the strategy of the axis of resistance option, it's so incomprehensibly stupid. I don't even know how people can say that. I don't know if anybody living in Syria would agree that that should be the strategy when they saw what just happened to Hezbollah and to the other forces that mindlessly walked into a trap. Why would the new Syrian government want to walk right into the same trap that just watched their other enemy fall victim to? So I think we have to keep in mind that human beings require a certain minimum standard of living, and in the end, we all want peace and comfort, and people should be allowed to strive for that.
One last point about Libya. 2 weeks ago, there was a rumor that the US was going to send illegal immigrants to Libya. Then both governments in Libya said we know nothing about that. Nobody could find anyone in an official position who claimed knowledge of this thing. So the US government was talking about agreement with a Libyan government that doesn't exist. There are two governments in Libya, and both of them denied knowledge of the thing. So now to come to say, well, actually, we are going to deport Palestinians from their land to Libya, which the population that it hates, unlike, for example, illegal immigrants from the US, and that is going to happen. Come on. Nobody in Libya would admit it. The American government, the American embassy in Libya came out and said there is no such thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like a joke at this point. It's like when you tell your kid when they're misbehaving, if you don't behave, I'll send you to Antarctica. It's like the same. Libya's become that like scapegoat country of we're going to send the immigrants, we're going to send the Gazans, we're going to send the criminals. Everyone we don't like goes to Libya. It's
Netanyahu and his friends in the media sometimes talk about sending it to Indonesia, sometimes into Guinea-Bissau. And people keep reporting this as well. These are important plans. We have to be aware of them and we have to act against them. You are just being a mouthpiece for a psychological warfare. One of the things that most horrify people in Gaza is being deported from their land. And the Israeli government is trying to scare them with more than weapons. And you're just helping in that. Shut up.
I think we got it.
Jazakumullah khairan.
Thank you,
All right.
Shabir.
Thank you very much, guys. Salam.